Hey, I'm Bradford with the Penny Pinch Guide to Personal Finance, and in this video, we're going to be covering how to fill out IRS Tax Form 1040 for tax year 2023 using the following assumptions. So first off, in this one, we're going to be using a tax filing status of single. We're not going to be having any dependents on the tax form. We're only going to be getting our sources of income from the employer with a W-2, from the bank with a 1099 INT, and then from a brokerage with a 1099B. As well as we're going to be using the standard deduction provided by the IRS. And then we're not going to be having any sort of additional tax credits or tax deductions on this Form 1040. And then another thing that's important to know before we jump into the form itself is that it's a really helpful piece of information that the IRS publishes that is written in plain English is going to be the Form 1040 GI or General Instruction. You can get to that by Googling it, or I'm going to link it down in the description down below. With that in mind, let's jump into the 1040 and get started. So starting off here is actually going to be the Form W-2, which for the majority of people is going to be the most important piece of tax information that you're going to have before you can actually start filing your taxes. Because this is going to be where the majority of your income is coming from, and it's going to be documented by your employer and then sent to you as well as the IRS. So a quick rundown here is it's going to have your social security number. It's going to have the employer's equivalent of a social security number for the company as itself. Who's the employer? Who are you? And then going over here to the actual numbers, kind of 1 through 15. Number 1, that's going to be showing what are your wages that are actually reported to the IRS. 2, that's going to be how much federal income tax was withheld, and you're going to be drafting that and pulling that over to the 1040 that we'll get to in a minute. 3 and 5, these are going to be your Social Security as well as your Medicare wages and tips. You don't need those for the 1040, as well as they're accompanying how much was actually withheld for both of those. That's not going to be reported either. And then you can kind of skip past that. And then if you are in a state that does have an income tax, this is where you're going to be looking for that information in terms of how much money was actually withheld by your company for your state. In this example, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So I'm using Texas, which does not have a state income tax. So with that in mind, and this is going to be the information that's going to be forming the skeleton of how to actually fill out the 1040, let's get into the first page of that. So right here, we have the IRS Form 1040. See that it's for the correct tax year, 2023. And the first section is just you filling out your personal information. So you're going to have your first name, your last name, your social security number. Where do you live? And then you have right over here the option to burn some money with the presidential election campaign fund. You can check $3 for you and or your spouse. If you'd like to light money on fire, that's your choice. Filing status, make sure you get this one correct because it has significant impacts on how much money you are actually going to pay in taxes. So for this one, we're saying we are single in this scenario. Then coming down here, digital assets. Think, are you trading in NFTs or crypto? For this scenario, I'm going to say no, so make sure you get that checked. And then standard deduction. This is going to be dealing with if you have some sort of disability, or you're really old, or you're blind, or if somebody else can claim you as a dependent. So if none of those things apply to you, you can skip this section, as well as the next section, which deals with dependents, which for the scenario, we're not going to have them, but this is where you would fill out that information there. So going on to the next page, lines 1 through 15. This is where going to be the majority of your income information actually goes. So starting out with line 1, you're going to just be pulling this over from your W-2. So it's going to be $50,000 for this scenario. And then kind of going down here through B all the way down through I. In this scenario, it's not applicable, but kind of touching on those. We're going to have household employee wages, not going to be a factor for a lot of people. Tip income, so if you're a waiter or waitress, that's going to be applicable for you. Medicare waiver payments, not applicable to most people. Taxable dependent care benefits, that's going to be below a certain income threshold. You're going to get certain tax benefits to be able to pay for child daycare. Wages from Form 819, line 6, not applicable to most people. Other earned income, you can reference the 1040 GI, not applicable for most people again. Non-taxable combat pay election, that's going to be if you served in a combat tax exclusion zone. Think Qatar with the deed, that's going to be the most popular one if you are in the military. Then going down here, we're going to have tax exempt interest, qualified dividends, nothing for any of those. But I did actually skip a step, so come back up here. So 1Z, you're going to add up all the lines from 1 through H. So since none of these other things were applicable other than 1A, we're just going to copy that line and put it down here. Now in 2B, this is going to be taxable interest. Now I didn't generate a 1099 DIV for this, but that's going to be what you're going to be getting from your bank. So if you have a checking account or savings account and you're earning interest on that account, in this situation, we're going to say Joe earned $22 in interest from a savings account over the past year. So you're going to want to make sure you put that there. Now, one thing you might have noticed on here is that there's no decimals and cents. Now you have two options with how you approach your 1040. Either you can include everything in cents, or you can just round everything up or down to the nearest dollar. So in this situation, I chose to just round to the nearest dollar, makes it a little bit cleaner to be able to present. So going down here, we're going to be also talking about qualified dividends, IRA distributions, pensions and annuities, Social Security benefits. Not applicable for Joe and not applicable for most people unless you were in retirement. The next section that we're going to care about is going to be 7. So looking here, line 7, this deals with if you have some sort of capital gains. So you're buying and selling stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, if you sold a rental property, something like that. So look, you're going to need to have a Schedule D in basically all situations. You're probably not going to have a Form 8949 unless you have some sort of income in this that is outside of a 1099-B. So this situation, we're going to say Joe made just over $2,000 with regards to stock trading for the past year. So that's going to go in line 7. Next is going to be 8, additional income from Schedule 1, line 10. That deals with additional income and adjustments to income. It's going to be a variety of different less common types of income. So not applicable to most people, but if you feel like you have a more kind of out there type of job with the income that's not that regular and you're not receiving a W-2 for it, that could be applicable underneath line 8. So coming down here to 9, you're basically just adding things together. So you're going to add everything that's up here together. So you're just over $52,000. Line 10, that's going to be adjustments to income from Schedule 1, line 25. Again, not applicable in this situation. So we're just going to copy 9 and put it down into 11. Now 12, this deals with the standard deduction or the itemized deduction. So for this one, we're choosing to go with the standard deduction. And the nice thing about this is we don't even have to go to the general instructions. We can just look on the 1040 itself, and it tells you what is the standard deduction for the various different filing statuses. So you see that standard is going to be $13,850. So we just plop that right in there on line 12. So looking at line 13, this is going to be qualified business income deductions from Form 8995 or 8995A. That allows business owners to deduct up to 20% of their business income from their taxes if they meet additional requirements. So if you don't own your own business, not going to be applicable for you, not applicable for Joe in this situation. So at that point, we're going to be copying line 12 and putting it into 14. So again, we're just copying and pasting that standard deduction. And then line 15, we're going to be subtracting line 14 from 11. So in this instance, in this situation, we're just going to be taking the standard deduction and subtracting it from the total income earned. And this is going to give us our taxable income for the tax year. So it's going to be $38,209. Now, taking this one, we're actually going to be jumping into the IRS tax tables, which is within the 1040 general instructions, to figure out how much money do we actually owe the IRS when it comes to our taxes for the previous tax year. So coming over here in the tax table, again, it's in the 1040 GI. It gives you some examples here. How do you actually figure it out? So you're going to go and you're going to look on line 15. How much money did we actually earn? And then we're going to come down here and we're going to say, hey, is it at least $0 but less than $5? If that's the case, we'll go through the actual example in a second, but then you're going to go over to whatever your tax filing status is. So in this case, it would be single. So we're going to actually jump down to the section that's applicable. So in this one, we're going to be saying he made at least $38,200, but less than $38,250. Going over to single is going to give us a tax amount that we actually owe of $4,367. So we're going to copy that amount and we're actually going to go and place it in line 16. So what we have over here, we have line 16. So it's going to give us, hey, tax, see the instructions, and then check to see if forms 8814 or 4972 are applicable. Hey, good case for you and for Joe, not applicable to a lot of people. It deals with unearned income for minors and taxes on lump sum payments. So lump sum payments, think you won the lottery and you chose to take a lump sum, and unearned income for minors, that's going to be dealing with like an UTMA. It's a special type of tax sheltered account that you can set up for your kids. No dependents in this situation, not worrying about it. Unfortunately for Joe, he did not win the lottery in this past year. So we're just going to copy and paste the amount up here that we got from the previous section. And then we can go through and say, hey, 17 amount from Schedule 2, line 3, what is that? That's going to be additional taxes, not applicable to most people. Okay, next section. All right, 18. So we're just going to add together lines 16 and 17. Since we didn't have anything for 17, we can just copy and paste 16 into 18. And then we're going to go 19, child tax credit or credit for other dependents from Schedule 8812. Schedule 8812 is going to be additional child tax credits. So 20, that's gonna be amount from Schedule 3, line 8. What is Schedule 3? That's gonna be additional credits and deductions. These are gonna be less common, that aren't applicable to a lot of people, but I highly recommend if you're filing taxes on your own to at least go through each of them so that way you know whether or not they actually apply to you. Yeah, there's probably not a high chance that they do, but in the off chance you find a credit that does apply to you, hey, that's gonna be more money in your pocket. So Joe doesn't apply line 20, so moving on to the next one. Line 21, we're gonna add to line 19 and 20. So in this case, it's gonna be a 0 for both. And again, you probably noticed this, hey, I didn't put zeros in all the sections where zeros are applicable. That's another one of the things that are optional to you. You can either put a 0 in all of those or you leave them blank, either or, but don't mix and match. So 21, as I said, it's gonna be a 0 here. 22, subtract line 21 from line 18. If less or 0, enter 0. So I'm just gonna leave it blank because it is 0. 23, other taxes, including self-employment tax from Schedule 2, line 21. This one's gonna be 0 as well. So then for line 24, we're basically just gonna copy what we had from up in line 18, and we're gonna copy it down here. So we're gonna re-enter 4367. Now going into the payment section, how much money have you actually already paid to the federal government? So 25A, that's gonna be coming directly off the W-2 that we referenced earlier. So in your case, go look up in the W-2 and it's gonna tell you, hey, how much money did your employer already save from your paycheck and give to the federal government? So in this case, we already paid over $6,700 in taxes. Hint, that means we're gonna be getting a nice check in the mail. B, Forms 1099, did you have any money that was withheld on those? It's not that common, and in this situation, it's not applicable. So then going on, other instructions, again, not applicable there. 26, that's gonna be estimated income tax payments, an amount applied from your 2022 return. Unless you're running a business or you're making a large amount of money that isn't W-2, it's not gonna be applicable for you. So then we're gonna look at D, and that's just gonna be adding up lines 25A through C. So again, we're gonna copy 6754 and drop it into 25B. And then 27, the earned income credit. So this is gonna be a really low threshold, and I know in this situation it doesn't apply, but it's a credit for those that are low income individuals to try to give them a little bit back. So we're gonna be leaving that line empty. And then 28, additional child tax credit from Schedule 8812. So if you have any additional child tax credits, these are separate from the regular child tax credit, but no dependents in the situation, so we're gonna leave that line blank. Going into 29, the American Opportunity Credit from 8863, line 8. That's basically just a credit that you, if you're pursuing an undergraduate degree, getting your bachelor's, something like that. So what we're gonna see here is that basically the rest of these are gonna be blank for the situation. Reserved for future use, that's just for the IRS. Amount from Schedule 3, line 15, not applicable. And then you're gonna basically be adding up all the total other payments and credits. It's gonna be a 0 for here. And then 33 is just adding up 25D, 26, and 32, the total payments. And in this situation, it's just payments that came from the W-2. So we're gonna be copying 25D and putting it into line 33. And then covering over here, what do we have for lines 34 through the end? So basically what we have going on here is we're gonna say, hey, if line 33 is more than 24, subtract 24 from line 33. So did you pay more than you actually owe in this situation? Yes. So how much money does Joe get back? It's gonna be $2,387. Next line, 35A, the amount of line 34 that you want refunded to you. Always do all of it unless you like just giving the money to the government. So I'd say do that. Then in here, the fastest way, you don't want to get a check in the mail because it's going to take forever. Put your routing number, your account number, whether it's a checking or savings, and input that there. And then 36, this would be if you chose to not take all your money. Let's say you do run a business, you have some sort of side hustle, you do Uber, DoorDash, one of those things. Maybe it would be worth already applying some of your money to your estimated tax so you don't have to pull it from someplace else. Then going into 37, that's going to be subtract 33 from line 34. Basically is, did you not pay enough money? This is going to figure out how much money you actually owe to the federal government. And just kind of skimming over this one, if you do owe money to the government, make sure you pay it by the tax deadline, and then figuring out, okay, where do you actually mail that check? If you're not going to pay online, you're going to find that information in the 1040 general instructions. It's going to differ based on how much money you made and how much you owe, as well as what part of the US do you live in. So going on to the final part here, third-party designees. This is going to be if somebody else is filing your taxes for you. So you have a CPA. If that's the case, you're probably not watching this video, so probably not applicable. And then you're going to sign here. You're going to throw in your signature, what's to the date, what is your occupation, and then if you filed your taxes already, you should have an IRS identification number, and you're going to put that right here. And then pay, prepare, use. Again, that's going to be for a CPA, but not applicable for this situation. And then at this point, assuming you have all the additional forms and schedules done, that would mean that your taxes are done. It'd be time to go back, review everything, and then you can go send it off either using the IRS free fillable forms so you can e-file it yourself, or you can actually just go and send it in the mail, which again, I don't recommend just because it takes so much longer to actually be processed. And then if you are owed a refund, it's going to take a heck of a lot longer for you to get that money back in your pocket. Now, hopefully that walkthrough makes filing your taxes a little bit less complicated and a little bit less scary. But if your tax situation is more complicated than what I did in this video, which admittedly was a very simple one, please go through and follow our Tax 101 playlist. We cover things like business partnerships with 1065, as well as an LLC. If you have a sole proprietorship and you're filing a Schedule C because you run your own business, all of the more common tax situations, as well as things that get a little bit more complex, we cover on our playlist. So please use that as a resource in addition to the 1040 general instructions. Thanks for watching. And from your first penny to your first million, we're here to help.